evening, folks, and welcome to another session from the Old Wise Asylum. Oh, have we just had the hot week just to cover that dodgy stuff that we've pushed all over our entire landmass, cars, you name it. I don't know, but I'll tell you what, it were fishy, and I did a little short just to show that it's not actually, it's not a sand. You know, I'm a builder, I've worked with every sand you can imagine. I know what sand feels like, and that was not sand. In fact, if you put it in your fingers, it was even finer than skim, which we use to plaster walls. And that is refined. I mean, the effort that goes into refining a mineral to get it to the consistency of skim or even drywall adhesive is immense. So, magnetic it was, because it would appear the brown stuff that is what we got up here is magnetic. So is that the case? Hot weather for a week, everybody's got the windows open. Because I watched the trail in the morning to block the sun, and then at evenings trailing again to create a canopy to hold the heat in. You're going to keep your windows open all night, aren't you? And then we get that malarkey going on. Weird. Very, very weird indeed, and I think people need to start paying attention that there is some serious warfare going on against all of us from the skies, and not a murmur from that fellow that's trying to call himself the king. No, he's hopping about up in Scotland doing his jollies up there because he loves Scotland. He loves the old Aggie squeeze. Parliamentarians, what are they doing? Do they talk about it? They never talk about it. Are they doing anything about it? Why? Well, because they don't represent you. The moment you give them your power of attorney or vote to act with it in Parliament, what they don't tell you is that the minute they get into power, they get that office, they renege on your agreement that they have with you and come into agreement with Cabinet. The Cabinet, important. It's a what? Nobody can define it. However, it is known, as we've discussed many times, it has a direct connection to the Privy Council. Now, the Privy Council, according to Rob B back in the day when I met him down in Derby, had come across the fact that the Privy Council acted for the absent king. Now, interesting. And I don't think even I've considered this in the past, but the court of the king was abolished in 1649. Okay, off with his head. The court of the king. So, you know, every king had a court, didn't they? Blah, 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 blah. It was actually abolished, and from that, at some point in time, it became an office. Which is important, because if there's an absent king, in that respect, then maybe the Privy Council's had power since 1649. What is it? What is the Privy Council, in fact? Yeah. Just so I put that by you because it's interesting. But you know, no politician, the moment you've given your power of attorney to act in Parliament on your behalf, that agreement's off. Same with the councillors. The minute the councillors get your vote, get your power of attorney to act in the council chamber, the minute they get office, they renege on your agreement because they're now in agreement with the executive, the council executive, which is a big channel for the stakeholders in every town, everywhere. Stakeholders being the biggest employers. So, every town, let's look at it from this angle. Every single town on the stakeholder committee will be the Asda, will be the Tesco, will be the Aldi, the Lidl, Waitrose, ad infinitum. Whatever supermarkets are operating in your town are on the stakeholder committee. Do the stakeholder committee then, do they want you to have a town centre where you can go shopping happily, freely, and the public can open up a business and ply the trade? Well, of course, no, they don't. They want you in the supermarkets. The bigger boys right up at the top end want you in the supermarkets because they want that to be the only outlet for food, because they want you to dance to all this nonsense that we got a feel for in the last 3 years. Yeah, control, that's what it's all about. But ultimately, at ground level, What everybody needs to start to reckon with is the fact that the moment those you give your vote or power of attorney to act on your behalf breach that agreement. What is law? Law is agreements. Okay, they're in breach of law. They're in breach of commercial contract law, as in agreement law, but they're also fraudulent because they don't tell you. That's fraud. They haven't disclosed all the facts. The agreement is over. So they don't represent you. They run around ticking up little causes they know you're bothered about if they can be asked. And the public seem to be content with that. And then at MP level, it's even bigger. You're given the power of attorney to act for you in Parliament. Agreement gone. The minute they get that office, they're in agreement with the Cabinet, which is in agreement with the Privy Council, and you're not being represented in Parliament. So there are the 2 points of fact at ground level where you do have the power to overturn that agreement. None of them enforce whether the councillors or MPs have the mandate. They're in fraud, they've breached the agreement. And that's pretty much it in that sense. And that's, I think, where people need to start to recognise in your own town, if you're politically active, that if you want to get some kind of change, then you're first going to have to uproot that which is blocking you, the obstruction to democracy, the obstruction to the constitutional monarchy. Because, of course, it's looking very much like, to me, the constitutional monarchy means nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's just a facade to keep people thinking everything's in order. Well, it's not been in order for a very long time. There's anybody that watches this, I know that has, cocked a wink at what's really going on as opposed to what the map believes is going on. We're all very well aware that the monarchy hasn't been operating correctly for a very long time, especially through the 70 years of the previous monarch. So politically, that's where it's basically at, and until you get to grips with that, nothing is going to change. Every town has its crown agents within it who are operating like a shadow, i.e. they'll jump from one to another. So if they're assigned to one particular left or right, mainly the left, they'll be assigned there to destroy it. And at the time it comes to the crunch, they'll jump ship, because they're not jumping ship really. They were already on that ship, they boarded the other ship subversively, and off they go. We've got prime example of that going on actually with a guy called Miles Parkinson, Crown agent with a lackey, Stacey something, and they have a little crew. They created this emotional cannon front, which was a food bank with a little bit of a difference. All the Protestant massive jumped on it, loved it. Oh, it's fantastic. They must be fantastic, these people. Meanwhile, in the background, this little crew that they've got going have done everything they can through the last elections, the local elections, to sabotage anything and everything that disagreed with the Crown gig. So Crown agents they are. Fine. Principal agent, which has got the power. Not the agent, the principal. You're the principal. You are the principal beneficiary, of the CQV trust. If you'd only understand this. All these people work for you, the agents. It's not as simple as that, of course, which is what I've been working on for the last 10 months in order how to approach that correctly and bring it onto the chessboard and gain checkmate. That's the game. That's the game. The ruling bloodline guy told us it was. That is the game. It's not sitting there striking as we looked at last week and go, oh, it's not working for me. Oh. Work out the territory. Make your map synchronise with the territory. Then, and only then, are you ready to start moving pieces on the chessboard. Yeah, it's so important. Everybody, I know you guys out there, a lot of you have been studying this law for so long, you're so full of stuff, you don't believe that you should have to start again. Well, believe you me, I started again 3 years ago, and then again 10 months ago. Each time a restart. I've been doing this for 15 years, the law side of things. So it's essential. I've done it twice. I've done it twice within 3 years because it is essential It really is essential if you're going to put yourself on the chessboard at the back row rather than being the pawn at the front. You get me? You get what I'm saying there? And of course, they've undermined the sort of power of the chessboard in the sense something else is controlling the back row. It's controlling the queen, controlling the bishop, controlling the castles. You see, that's another interesting thing. I was looking at some mafia stuff this week, and it was a guy going on about what happened in America. And how families that had moved from Europe and been there a couple of generations were sort of overseeing the influx from Italy of all the various Italian areas moving in to, I can't remember, Chicago and New York. I think probably New York. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think, well, I don't know. Anyway, basically what he said was, what the first thing that happened was, to create the power of a mafia, they had to create themselves bases everywhere. And what they did was open pizza parlours. Yeah, pizza parlours. These kind of, it looks like it's innocent that things are being set up like this all over the show, but they're actually little power points for the mafias to grow, to expand, and to have places to go, do business, move things, hide things, etc., etc. So takeaways are another version of the same, so it's the same thing. Barbers, turkey, yeah, all these, you've got to start looking at these moves as pretty much a blueprint or a copy of the blueprint, which we can see in the stories about how the Italian mafias gain hold in America, because that's of course what they do everywhere. Not that I'm poo-pooing that side of things, but I'm just saying we have to start looking at the games that are going on around us in that manner, because that's exactly how it's playing out. So I thought that was interesting that we just touched on that. Now, this week, what's been going on? We've got the G20. Now, the media and all the fruit bats, 2 weeks up to this week, were pushing this idea that in was going to go Sunak and Biden and all these Western tossbags, so-called. Obviously, we now know they're not. They're actually working for the Privy Council as the cabinet, except no matter which party's in, so they're all asswipes anyway. But they were promoting the idea they were going to go in there and give old Vlad the Impaler hell and get the whole world to annihilate and call him names and, you know, basically say, well, Vlad, you're a bad one. And we're all on side with these fruitcakes over here. Well, that didn't really work out very well at all. In fact, if nothing else, the West is in a far inferior position than it ever was because, of course, Biden got up there and talked absolute gibberish. So Sunak didn't get his chance when he went to India to talk with Modi neither. We have to start to see this as it is, and that the biblical tradition as an entire ethos is being set against itself while the rest of the world watches. So that's all the non-biblical nations, China, India, Indonesia, Africa, all these nations. I know Africa's got a big, the evangelical for a long time over there, but we have to start to look at it in this way, that what's actually being set up here is the total destruction of the biblical tradition by those who claim to be it themselves. The Jews, the Muslims, the Christians. They're being set up on a road to annihilate themselves, each and every one of them. And you only have to glimpse at it if you look at China, what's China been doing for the last, let's say, 15 years, especially when they got excited about organ trafficking, organ transplanting. They've shown you well that the system that's been set up in China by the same families that have been running the British Empire, all the India companies, and thus took over the entire West, are the same force. It's the same force, and China as the corporation is their chosen model that we class here as what they want to reset the West to. It's a done deal. You know, all the elites, so many of the elites have moved over there over the last 20 years, and before that even. Murdoch, Kissinger, they moved over there a long time ago. The game is set over there. And they alone are the ones watching. The world's going to watch the biblical tradition annihilate itself. Because not a single religion involved in that, my apologies, I'm just a bit runny nose here, is operating according to its own doctrines. And people need to get a grip of this here. Because I watched, over the week, it was a Zoom by important high-ranking Catholics in America. And they were discussing Maui in Hawaii, pulling up some quite dubious points. It just sounds like, it stinks like the big hurricane they had in New Orleans that time, where FEMA were basically shooting survivors, etc., etc. I'm not sure, there's not been anything said that they've done that at this event, but blocking roads, stopping people from feeding each other, closing down food outlets, etc., all been going on. It's now known. I don't think anybody, if you've cocked a wink at it, can see you've not missed that going on. But they were also talking about Pope Francis's right-hand man, basically calling Jesus a shag-ass, basically slagging him off to death. And this is the so-called Pope of the Vatican slagging the living daylights out of the very guy, or at least his right-hand man, but because he didn't pull him on and he sanctioned it, going over from hell to burn, yet claims to be the vicar of this character, and thus made a claim against the entire world and its contents. So you can see that with the Jesuit takeover of the Vatican, it's gone right up its own ass. Islam are very excited in the West, believing God's giving it to them because it's their turn, because they're the third religion of the biblical tradition, when in fact, if you look at Islam, there's very little biblical in it. Very little indeed. They only take the parts that work in sync with, as the Jews present it, which is the Talmud. So that's already up its ass, and so is the idea of the Hebrews, which isn't the Hebrew God. It was the Judean God, Enlil, trying to take over the Hebrews, who kept saying, get stuff, we're not interested. We'd rather have a king than some unseen voice in an inner sanctum we can't go in. Yet, those that wrote the Bible back in the day have mashed that up to make it look like actually the Hebrew, it was the Hebrew God. It's not a Hebrew God at all, the garden God. The garden God is of the Babylonian system. That's where it's at. But they've managed to persuade the Hebrews that it's actually there. No, you look at the history of it, the Hebrews were saying, piss off, go away, we're not interested. Forever. Which is the reason why I think the Assyrians pretty much wished them off and allowed them to move off into Europe. Now, and I think the original game that was set up, where you get, this all the great architecture, etc., was based and built in the Hebrew tradition, as opposed to what's come and taken over post-Crusade. Now, something else that I found very interesting, somebody posted it today actually on Facebook, and that is Vesta, a goddess. And we discussed, did we not, Juno and Venus, in relation to their input with Paris, and then with Aeneas, who set up Rome, yeah, and then from that we got Brutus, who set up Londinium, or the new Troy, Troya. Because you didn't actually call Londinium, it was called Lundenvik. So after Troya, it was actually called Lundenvik, then Londinium when the Romans came in. And Lundenvik, it seemed to be a Saxon stronghold, and it's where they did a lot of slave trading. But yeah, our maps, you see that, and straight away you think we know it, and we really don't, because we're not necessarily looking correctly. So we sort of explored Venus and Juno, and that Mother Mary would in fact have been Venus. Juno being imperial in the fact that She is a Carthage goddess, which we know is the Phoenicians. Yeah. So we can see it's pretty clear that the imperial side of it, which was sidelined then to the whole of the Roman Empire, allowing Venus to carry on, let's say, in the church, has been completely overturned now, and pretty much Venus is nowhere to be seen. It's all Juno. But, and again, this is really important, Vesta, a Trojan goddess, is very interesting to just get into that, because the placenta is very important to Vesta. And so too, wills. And around Vesta, which I can't help but think is so close to Isis in the fact that there's a phantom phallus, a phantom winkle running around everywhere, impregnating unsuspecting females back in the past. It's very reminiscent of Isis in it. So that's 3 goddesses we've got going down there, perhaps, and maybe. And Vesta, of course, you've got Vestal virgins. So, of course, what happened to the priesthood in Rome back in, I think, let's have a look, 1123, and then again in 1139, where the priests were no longer allowed to play with a winkle or have a wife. Again, took place 1123, 1139. There's a lot of other things that I've seen in the past that I can't bring to mind right now that were put in place again around this time. So this is after the Crusades, in my opinion, after the gods, the goddesses, the jinn and whatever else were in these deserts in the Middle East that the Templars brought back. Not just the Templars, of course, the Hospitallers, which is where you get the Malta, Knights of Malta, you get the Knights of St. John and Jerusalem. All this comes off the Knights Hospitallers. You know, the hospitals are the temples of the Hospitallers. And we can see what they're doing in there. Can we not? We can indeed see what they're doing in there. So there's some interesting data to go through tonight in relation to, let's have a look at it again. Why have all these religions gone up their arse to the point now it's being set up for the rest of the world to watch as an audience? So this is a giant Roman amphitheatre gig going on where, you know, they're encouraging the Christians, the Muslims, the Jews to go at it like you wouldn't fucking believe. And let's face it, out there's a lot of hatred and anger among certain factions of different groups here. They brought in all these fruit bats of, I mean, they're not, it's just ridiculous that people can still think they've got a government and that this fucking idiot that calls himself a king is actually doing his fucking job. No, he's fanning around up in Aggie Squeeze-Along with a kilt on, abusing his wife, while his little shit-ass bald son is moving himself into position to become king. And what they're doing, they've got bots all over the fucking shop, talking him up like you wouldn't believe. The guy's a complete imbecile, in my opinion. Certainly not fit to even attempt to claim another fakel as a king. It's not on. It's garbage, and this is what's going on. And people are still sat there like this semblance of government that your councils are operating correctly, and that Big Ears Fat Fingers is doing his job. Bullshit with a capital bollocks would be my take on that. So I'm a little bit pissed off because people just are not seeing this stuff. People are too busy tossing around like nothing's changing, nothing's going to go on, and that this bunch of Johnny-come-latelys down at Chalcare, Westminster, and in your local council chamber are even for a second acting on your behalf. They're actors. They're happy to do it. They're bumming you. Okay? They're defrauding you. They're no longer in agreement with you. And that happened the minute they took the office off your vote and power of attorney. And this is all going on at equity. Every single bit of it is going on at the equitable level. The hidden point for it, the besmirchment of common law, is the fact that the landed gentry, or the aristocracy, are allowing it. They're not pushing the rights at all in any way, shape or form. They're not holding the office of monarch to account. But why would that be? So, recently we've discussed the fact that Prince William is the patron of ARC, Absolute Return for Kids, which was the spearhead for the academy agenda, which means the incorporation of the schools, which is why they're pushing all the filth that the teachers, the so-called or educators, are actually paedophiles, child abusing freaks, and people that are in there that have to keep it secret. That's because of the corporate side of it. ARC was the major spearhead for that. You've got Oasis, which is Church of England, which of England means away from England. We know what that is, Church of Israel. So they're dealing with Gentiles. They're treating everybody as Gentiles here. Gollum, in fact, let's be quite frank, but they just want them ready to take up arms and fight in this war that they've set up, the priesthood, in order the rest of the world can sit in the amphitheatre and watch Jews, Christians, and the Muslims annihilate each other. Mutual annihilation, because China does not accept any form of religion whatsoever, apart from the Noahide, which isn't even really a religion. It's just 7 laws with 600 and so something bylaws, now sub-laws, in order they can mop up the Gentiles. But then that includes the Chinese as well, and Indonesians and every other culture that may think it's in because it's not classing itself as biblical, but in fact you still have your own cultures, you still have your own belief systems and religions, and that's not going to be accepted either. There's your 200 million man army supposedly coming in after this Armageddon. The Armageddon, remember, is entirely within the biblical script. It's not found outside anything else. This is what people have to see. You, out there, holding on to these systems that are clearly corrupted, you are going to be the ones thrown to the lions in the arena. All of you. Muslim, Christian, Jew. Probably in the opposite order. Jews first because of what's going on in Israel. Muslim Christians or Zionists and Muslims across Europe. Across Europe. You know, this is how you've got to start to see this. So the entire European landmass, America, Canada, Australia, etc., is going to be playing a part in this amphitheatre. You know, but back to what I was saying about watching this Zoom with these, apparently, it seemed to be respected and arrogant Catholics. They were bringing out some great points, but they kept referring back always to the edit. And I'm thinking to myself, it's that edit and fallback that's stopping you from seeing what's actually happened, and that is you're holding on to a regime that is not operating in accordance with the theology that you hold dear. I mean, the Pope, they were making it clear that the Pope actually is always slagging off American Catholics, trying to debase any semblance of power that the Catholic massive have in America. They've done that here already, but the Catholics themselves have done that here already, haven't they? The Catholics were leaving the church from the 1970s because it stopped talking love and started talking authority. It doesn't mean the Catholics are not still Catholics. They are. The Protestants have suffered through the Zionist Schofield Bible, which is based, its major points that takes you away from biblical tradition, are actually Cyril Schofield's notes at the side. They're the doctrines, the maxims, you might say, that the Protestant massive have took on to become Zionists. Nobody's off on the biblical tradition. And as I said, the Islamic text is so far off the biblical tradition, one might say it isn't even a part of it, apart from holding the 10 Commandments. Again, like I said, everything that the Jewish fraternity hold dear, as opposed to, so it's the Old Testament and that's it. They're not particularly interested in the Gospels at all. They accept Jesus as exists, etc., blah, 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 but not as the Son of God. Fine. You know, I've said this before. You show me anywhere in the Gospels that Jesus says, worship me. He doesn't. He doesn't say that at all. He says, follow me. And what's he telling you that he's doing? That he's operating in accordance with the kingdom within, which is why we're having so much trouble with everything that's without in the territory. So if you're following the man, you're not interested in that garbage out there. None of it. Church, Islam, or even Judaism. Because if you're following the man, you're following what he did, which was expressing what he pulled from within. And that's it. You know, you can torture your blue in face with that, because the edit will prevent everybody from seeing this game in those terms. That's why they've managed to run riot. You know, it's ridiculous. It's quite ridiculous, actually, what's happened. But it's happened, and we're now at the part we're ready for the second horse, which removes peace from the earth. That's because everybody's going to hold on to the regime. That regime as a belief system has been promulgated by people that have been held in high regard that shouldn't be. In the same way, I mean, we can look at Pope Francis and see that in play, playing for everybody to see, because that's what they want you to see. But it's happened to all the religions in the biblical tradition. And people just really haven't seen it. The Gnostics, the same. The Rosicrucian, all these nightly orders, you're not actually operating in accordance with anything that has any semblance of the Gospels. None of it has. Crusades, that's what happened. That's what did it, in my opinion. And there's good cause to see that Vesta, you know, in charge of wills, in charge of, obsessed with the placenta, but more importantly, a phantom penis, impregnating flosses. Yeah? Well, let's go back to ISIS. I mean, what utter nonsense as a story. It's utter shite that a woman can run around, find the pieces of her husband, specifically his winkle, and give herself a baby. It's not happening, is it? It doesn't happen in this game. It's not physically, materially, manifestly possible. It's a fantasy, because it's allegorical. And it's more in tune with speaking about, you know, what's going on up there in the old heavens. You know, the 12 signs, all this malarkey. And, you know, your Gnostics they will come out with the allegories, but they've got lost. And the Masons are just there as the fifth science building this shit, as they're told to. And then they're going to be scapegoated, which have been being scapegoated for the what? God, for the last 200 years, in readiness. When in fact, they're no more guilty than anybody else, but the fact that they stay and hold into that without concerning themselves with what the masters are doing, they're in what I would call the biblical tradition. So the whole mix, you know, the Luciferians, the Satanists, the biblical tradition, all in an arena now, you know. It's quite sad, but that's exactly what I see as going on right now and about to go live next year with this second horse arriving. Oof. So Vesta is an important goddess that we should recognise and look at. And we will. I've got a few little bit of data that we'll have a look at it shortly, and I'll just have a look at what you guys are saying. Public Note says hit the thumbs up. Yeah, please do. It does make an effect, although YouTube do take them off. So, but I suppose if we try, it might work. Paul Sefton says, good evening, Sean, everyone. Good evening to you. Guitar Girl says, evening, all saw the short Sean. Hello, Guitar Girl. How are you? Yeah, we've had some serious shit thrust upon us in this last week, but interestingly, we've had rain before over the period. Now, you've not really seen it much, but a friend of mine had been collecting, he had a container in the yard, and he'd have been collecting it previous to what we've had this week. And he showed me a picture. He hasn't managed to get the picture to me because he doesn't do social media or anything like that. And I don't have a smartphone. So I've been unable to get his image, but let me tell you now, and I will get the image for you and I will show it you to show you that it's real. So he'd collected maybe 8 inches of water in this container, and it's brown, but at the bottom it's red. Red. Yeah? Now, I've spoken about this before, but way back in the day, I had 2 cats, and from kittens, I don't know why, I think what it was, they were black cats, and they're a bit different anyway. But they'd watched me with the sink in the bathroom, fill it with water, and that alone, they wouldn't drink out of anything else apart from that sink. I could put water down next to the food, they wouldn't do it. They'd go to the sink. So that was my bad, but in essence, it showed me something because the sink was constantly full. What I noticed was there was a red ring around it after maybe a week or so. So obviously I got in contact with United Utilities and asked them to explain what it was, and what they said was it's rust in the pipes. And I said, I don't think that's rust. But they were adamant it was rust and I knew we weren't going to get any further. I've noticed it in other places, the curtains on your shower, the bottom will turn red. Yeah, so it's red. Now, they say it's rust, I'm not so sure. But when you look at this image that they showed me earlier in the week, it's the same red. So have they actually been putting it in the water for such and such a long time, but a really diluted amount, and filling us up with this magnetic shit, whatever it may be? Because it's certainly not sand. Yeah, like I said, I'm a builder, I know what sand feels like. There is no crystalline structure when you did that, it just disappeared. So if it is man-made, it's ultra refined, military grade refined, because it was even more refined than skin or drywall adhesive. You know, so there's just, it's not good, and they've purposely done it this week. Now, I've also been looking into all the other stuff as well, again, just to see what's going on, and it doesn't look good. If what's being presented shows to be correct, we're not going to know until they start playing with it. So, but I'm watching, and there's much better information come out now in relation to content than was before. So, again, we don't know, we're going to have to wait. We're going to have to wait and see just exactly what's playing out here. But the whole nation, over a period of a few weeks, has experienced this downpouring of shit, basically. I mean, it was strange because we've had an exceptionally hot week this week. 30 degrees, 32 degrees even some days at my car has shown. And they've manipulated it, in the morning they've manipulated it, and they've done it again in the evening to keep it up really hot at the evening, which we know that they do with this geoengineering. So I'm out at 7:30, parked up, having a brew, and it's a strange atmosphere, and you know that above this very strange cloud that was just enveloping everything were blue skies, and you knew that, and I'd seen trails going as well in between, and then all of a sudden this darkish brownish cloud came over, and I have to be fair, there wasn't much rain at all, but sat there as I was, it had filled the windscreen. I'd have my windscreen wipers on, so I just turned the ignition, it'll wipe it, and it were absolutely brown, but very little rain. What I'm trying to say, the content of it was more of this brown stuff than the rain itself, and very, very little rain, but it completely and utterly covered everything. And the feeling I had was, this isn't correct, this isn't right, this isn't normal. And it made me think about it all day. It really did. Now, some people have suggested that we try burning it in case, as metals, they're trying to fix it onto the trees, which is what makes them burn when they set the fires going. So they can't put them out. And that's your aluminium, your barium, your strontium, all these metals that burn like billy oil, stuck all over the trees, and that's why they couldn't put them out. So one does wonder, what are they doing? Are they setting that up? But I don't think so, because it's breaking now, the weather. So I don't think they're going to try and start setting fire to blight it like they've been doing in Hawaii, and like they were doing 2016 across California, in the areas where we know they want to build a new Silicon Valley. Right, so there's just so much going on here that we need to be aware of, because there's a guy come out recently saying that there's a weapon on Antarctica that people really have no idea what it can do, and it's like, wow, just what is going on here. But yeah, definitely not good stuff, whatever it is. I have a microscope. Good. Have a look at what it is, because we need to look at what we need to know what it is. This stuff. And if you can do a video, PN, send it me, and we'll do a thing, you know. And if YouTube are not happy with that stuff, that's fine. I'll create them and put them on my website. But so far, I don't think YouTube have been bothered about this kind of stuff because maybe the algorithms haven't been programmed to attack it. But it's interesting. And then, what do they say? What they always said? Oh, it's sort of sand. It's not sand. It really isn't sand. I can't get that across. You know, if me says, oggy, 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 and it's a oi, oi, oi. Hello to all men, women, persons, aliens, those acting in official capacity. And PY Music says, evening all, evening Paul, how you doing? We should write a constitution by men, not law. You see, the thing is with law, it's just, what is law? It's whatever is agreed. Whatever's in the agreement. So back to the politics side, the agreements are broken. They broke the law. Not just contract law, but because of the fraud, it's criminal. So what we need to be looking at is how do we put liens on these bastards? How do we put liens on the properties? But more importantly, how do we put a lien on their estate? So that can't even be utilised. Not just by themselves, but by the system. Yeah. Food for thought, folks. So, all one, evening all, good evening to you. There's a chap on TikTok that analyses what fell on the cars the other day. Well, I've seen quite a few where they're doing it with the magnets. And in that video that I'd watched up till then, the stuff that seemed to be magnetic looked like a different colour, which is why I pointed that out. But then since that, I've seen that even the brown stuff that's being collected is magnetic. So yeah, Tring says, hi Sean, late again. Well, you're not that late, me old China. We're only 44 minutes in. God, I can rabbit on me, I'll tell you. Hiya Tring. Cos says, is that a punch? And a thumbs up. Oh, we like that. Cos. Untitled says, hello Sean and all males and females. Good evening to you. Cos says, a Vesta placenta. We'll have a look at it in a minute. You'll be quite surprised. Tree says, Edinburgh taxis had some bother removing that stuff from their cops, but accepted it was from the Sahara. Well, everybody is, isn't it? Why? Because it's on fucking telly. It's on the TV. That's the programming. I mean, no, surely you've all seen Rick Mayall's final thing. What does he say? Tree says, try to share. There's a guy on Telegram. Test it. So there's defunerally some anomalies other than usual shite. He will follow it up. Okay. Mew says, I've been in Namibia and the sand is a superfine powder. As what was on the cars. Okay. Well, fair enough. But was it magnetic, Mew? Look, there's fine and then there's fine. Now, I know I play with plaster all the time. And if you put some between your fingers, you'll still, right at the end, feel like a crystalline. Just very fine. But this stuff, there's no crystal to it at all. And what does sand do when you melt it? It's glass. And that's why we make sandpaper. You know, out of sand. It has a short structure to it. One might call it crystalline, if you will. But as a mineral, this stuff was so fine. But the jury's out, it has to be. We can't say we know one way or another, but if people are now starting to actually get stuck in and start to analyse it, this is what we have to do, because they're not going to do it for you, is it? Nobody else is going to do it. We have to do it and take it on and crack on and then report on what we find. Remember, folks, I've got a website. There's no censorship on that whatsoever. If there's subject matter to be discussed, it can be discussed. It can be put on as video, and I'll put it up there. There is no censorship on there, providing it's not Looney Tune stuff. You know what I mean? It can't be Looney Tune, or it can be done for libel. You know what I'm saying? It's got to be sound, but there's no censorship on the website. And I'm pretty sure down the line here, as it moves, this website's going to become more important to the work that I'm doing. So I don't want to breach the YouTube shit or like that. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you're not going to have a channel at all. So Anthony says the power vested from the abandoned vessel, salvaged by tossing a rope, the Record Admiralty Maritime Salvage claim. Well, we're going to have a look at it in a minute. It's interesting, I'll tell you. The guy said there was all sorts in the atmospheric stuff, but still he found other metals, etc., that he could not compare. Says Treen. Yeah, it didn't feel right to me, and I go on feeling and nothing else. You know what I'm saying? I'll go on feeling and then study. I don't study and then remove my feeling, as it were. So anyway, I'm sure we're gonna see if people are actually trying to work out what the hell it actually is going on. Now then, where am I? Here we go. Are these turning fast? I think they might be turning too fast. Okay. So if I transition, this is Vesta. She's considered the embodiment of the phallic mother. Wait a minute. Why is it changing there and not changing there? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just come off because I have it at studio. Okay. Now we're both seeing the same thing. She is considered the embodiment of the phallic mother by proponents of 20th century psychoanalysis. She was not the only most virgin and clean of all the gods, but was addressed as mother and granted fertility. Mythographers tell us that Vesta had no myths, save being identified as one of the oldest of the gods who was entitled to preference. Okay, sorry, I've got the timing wrong, but never mind. Roman Empire. Roman tradition required that the leading priest of the Roman state, the Pontifex Maximus, reside in the Domus Publicus, publicly owned house. After assuming the office of Pontifex Maximus in 12 BC, Augustus gave part of his private house to the Vestals as public property and incorporated a new shrine of Vesta. Yeah, I've got it too fast, I'm sorry. Now, this is somebody asking ChatGPT, was the placenta sacred, seen as sacred to the Vestal Virgins? Yes. In ancient Rome religion, the placenta was considered sacred to the Vestal Virgins. The Vestal Virgins were priestesses of the god of Vesta, and they were responsible for maintaining the sacred fire. Obligations and privileges for a priestess of Vesta. Whilst the tending of the sacred fire is the primary function, the Vestal Virgins had other functions as well. For instance, the Vestal Virgins were responsible for the preparation of the mola salsa, or salty flour, which is used in all state sacrifices. In addition, the Vestal Virgins were keepers of the wills. Hang on. So we go back to this. This is going to be good. You're going to be clever to get this. She had no myths, say, being identified as one of the oldest goddesses. Unlike most gods, Vesta was hardly depicted directly. Nonetheless, she was symbolised by her flame, the fire stick, and a ritual phallus, the fascinus. Well, what's, the flame? The Olympic flame, the torch, on top of Diana's grave, Diana's so-called grave. Remember this, yeah? So, what did Diana represent? Well, more in tune with Venus and the nature spirit goddesses, weren't she? So this is an attack. In the Temple of Vesta, the placenta, which was believed to symbolise the life force, was richly preserved and buried by the Vestal Virgins as a form of reverence. It was thought to have protective and purifying qualities. Symbolised the life force. Now then, that's what they're stealing, is it not? They're stealing our life force, turning it into these trusts. Keepers of wills, and took part in numerous ceremonies. In June, the Vestalian festival would be celebrated. The inner sanctum of the circular shrine to Vesta in the Forum Romanum would be open to ordinary women to bring offerings. So it was usually accessible to the Vestal Virgins and the Pontifex Maximus. While Vesta was the flame itself, the symbol of the phallus might relate to Vesta's function in fertility cults, but it may also be invoked in the goddess herself due to its relation to the fire stick used to light the sacred flame. She was sometimes thought as a personification of the fire stick, which was inserted into a hollow piece of wood, rotated in a phallic manner to create fertility. Roman tradition required that the leading priest of the Roman state reside. Yeah, we've done that. Vesta. So Augustus, 12 BC, is responsible for dealing and working with Vesta. But of course, if Vesta was a Trojan goddess again, a bit like Juno and Venus found in there. Yes, in ancient Roman religion, the placenta was considered sacred to the Vestal Virgin. So, I mean, obviously, after you can look at this again and you can read it all for yourself. And I'm sorry that I got the timing wrong there. I did actually go through all this really, and I've obviously missed changing the time frame on this one. So my apologies there for rushing that a bit. But yeah, can you see what I'm saying here? You know, the church as it was before is nothing like it has been since Crusades. Venus has lost out. Jesus has lost out. Juno became a figurehead because, of course, the imperial side of Rome has been massive and just grown and grown and grown and grown. That's what the British Empire is. You know what I'm saying? The American Empire, whatever you want to call it today. Now in China, Indonesia, in India, it's the same gig, people. You know? But remember, celibacy, which is important, Vestal Virgins, it's all there. Wasn't imposed onto the clergy of the church until 1123. 1139. Now remember also we've got Edward I in these times pulling in the Germanic. Yeah, so I'm looking at Edward again in a different light because he was in fact bringing in, but I think that, you know, what they were opposing was the Normans basically, or the Angevins as was. It gets smirky, but it all makes sense when you start getting into it and looking at that. Pitano once says, if Sausage Fingers is king, why is his ugly mug not on the legal tender? I've said this. Because they've no intention of issuing any more. Remember, in October, the fruitcakes on Carrot Cake Mountain are going to decide whether they've done enough to push in the digital currency. Get the cash out, folks. You know, stop being so fucking lazy. Get out there, draw the money out of the cash machine. Nobody knows what you've used it for, especially for your fuel and your food and anything that has a carbon footprint. Because that's how they collect it. An Untitled says, Pitano well said, yeah, indeed. But we've talked about this previously. Why is his ugly mug not on any promissory notes? Yeah. You know, it looks like with this fruitcake, it's an even lesser power than the previous one, who had no power whatsoever, only to do what you were told from the ecclesiastical side of the gig, which was the temple, the City of London, the Inner Temple, which she was a member of the Middle Temple. Yeah, we've gone through all this, but a long time ago, so you might have forgot. But it's all working. It makes sense, far more sense than any kind of fantasy that you have you believe we have a country operating correctly, and any country that's operating correctly, they're certainly not. So now I want to have a look at this because black nobility. Yeah. We've looked at it. We know that the Welfs, which is the Windsors, are full-blown black nobility. We've looked only slightly at Blenheim Palace as being a completely separate power base. Mainly, it would appear, the centre for the American power elite. And I'm still not sure whether they're actually decent rebels or not, but yeah, I don't think they were, because of course Churchill's part of that, and he was the biggest mass murdering pig operating for these bloodlines that you can actually imagine, at least since that monarch that were running the Congo for all those decades. I can't remember his name offhand, but murdered millions of Africans in the Congo. While he had it, it's a fiefdom, and if I remember rightly, the husband of the Dutch monarch, I'm just trying to think of his name, I can't remember it, but he started the Bilderberg. He tried to do the same, but it failed. So it's a gig that they like to keep together and going, as it were, you know. So I want you to just let's just try and, because I've said many times, haven't I, that you're looking at WEF, you're looking at Kissinger Associates. So what's Kissinger all about? What's Kissinger about, really? Oh, why has it done that? It's a bit of a pain in the arse when it does that, but it doesn't matter because we can sort that out. So, if we just saw it with, this is actually on Twitter, and somebody's posted. Klaus Schwab is a student, colleague, and very close friend of Henry Kissinger, and Kissinger is the student of the Rockefellers. But I question that slightly, and I'll tell you why after. Who are literal card-carrying eugenicists who have repeatedly expressed their open goal in reducing the world population for decades. They've written down how they plan to do it, and by what means, quite thoroughly. Excuse me. The Jaff Memo, NSSM 200 from Kissinger, Club of Rome, Rockefeller Population Council, Carnegie Foundation, Bilderberg, and numerous others that paint the picture clearly under the guise of philanthropy and humanitarian efforts. Only the useful idiots give them plausible deniability and assume positive moral intent. You'd think if anyone with intellectual honesty investigated the associations around the WF and Rockefellers and their open capture of various governments like with Trudeau and Biden administration, they'd see what's happening right now and know whatever they're told to do, like getting a shot or castrating their offspring, is probably a bad idea and has nothing to do with identity rights or morals. They obviously just want to gaslight and trick you into removing yourself from the gene pool. And they're trying to trick you from every vector imaginable, especially through the shot and food. And Jonas Salk described it as survival of the wisest. Now, I've done quite a bit on Jonas Salk, SV40, in which from 47 through the 50s, they actually said it had finished in the 50s, but it actually went on till 67 with the polio. I've got a report up on site about that. It's very interesting. I'll put it up and strongly suggest you have a look at that. And we know that the Rockefellers are behind all the synthetic stuff that we don't do and deal with here at the Wise Asylum. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, cut short. Let's just have a look at this very short video. But there's a very interesting point in there that just sort of contradicts the idea that he's actually a student of the Rockefellers. I'd say it's the other way around, that this was when the Rockefellers were put under the power and might of Kissinger, who was an ambassador at a much higher level than the Rockefellers themselves, and you were talking Committee 300. Maybe even the Committee of 100, I don't know. So, here we go. This is an old interview, I think it's back in the 80s if I remember rightly, but it's going back some. Oh, I can't do it from there, I'm going to do it here.
And you mentioned, David, Henry Kissinger, and I think he first was noticed by the Rockefeller family after he wrote a very erudite work on nuclear weapons and nuclear war back in the late 1950s.
Nuclear weapons and foreign policy.
Right, it's then published, and from that time on, he became pretty close to the Rockefeller family.
Well, he did. Actually, I guess I was the first one who got to know him because he was a member of an organization called the Council on Foreign Relations in New York, and there was a study group at that time that he, as then a young instructor at Harvard, presided at. I was so impressed by him that I introduced him to my brother Nelson, who was then governor in New York and was then considering seeking the presidency of the United States. They became great friends, and actually Henry became Nelson's foreign policy advisor as long as he was in public life, and I think is one of the remarkable international statesmen in the world today, even 30 years after he was Secretary of State.
So did you notice he said he was already, that Henry was already, that's David Rockefeller by the way, that David said that he was already a member of the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a satellite of the Royal Institute on International Affairs, which is a satellite again of the Round Table Group network. Milner Group, yeah, Cecil Rhodes, etc. Right? So Henry's already a member of the CFR, so he's already operating for the Royal Institute on International Affairs, or Chatham House, Tavistock, yeah? That's the whole gig. So he's already working for CFR, David's impressed by him, and all of a sudden he's introduced to his brother Nelson, who's going for presidency, and straight away then becomes his right-hand man. So you can see, in my opinion, Henry, this is the moment that the Rockefellers were put under the influence of Henry, as not the other way around.
He is still asked by heads of state when he travels the world for his advice.
Let me go back to the time you said when you came here,
Oh,
it transformed your
here
life.
he is.
Was there a course, a professor who really made that difference for you?
The current fruit bat.
So there was one course, one seminar of Henry Kissinger, which really opened my eyes. I wasn't accepted to the seminar, but I sat in. I think he let me in because I was German. And it was relatively shortly after the war. There were not too many Germans here. And this created a friendship which has endured until today. And, Henry has been several times in Davos. And I think it was mainly participating in his seminars that I developed my interest for geopolitical affairs.
And you mentioned
So, there you go. And the reason why I say, when you're looking at the WF, you're actually looking at Kissinger Associates, or it's an arm of and being instructed by Kissinger Associates. You've got to remember, Peter Carrington, he was a director. In fact, he was pretty much Kissinger's right-hand man through the late 70s and 80s, if I recall, and definitely the handler of Margaret Thatcher. And we have to see this, and Margaret Thatcher, people ridden on the fact that she was English and that she was against Europe, etc., but weren't really cottoning on to what she was doing with the privatisation, which was incorporating England, the British, English, Scottish, Welsh domestic system. And of course, to incorporate the domestic system, according to Mussolini, when he was asked to define fascism, said it should more correctly be called corporatism. When the corporations merge with the civil system, the domestic system, then fascism is in place as a system, which means the rules of the game are no longer operating according to the domestic rules, they're operating according to the commercial rules, the corporate side, profit. So, you can see why it's quite important that people reckon with this stuff. And so there's just a piece on how they've been celibate for 1,000 years, but they're on about changing it now. And there's where I got the data from in relation to when it were actually put in. So 1123, 1139, that's when it were actually forced on them. That it's had over 1,100 years as a church before all this change came on, which is after the Crusades and this imposition over Christendom of this idea of Jerusalem. It's quite ridiculous. And even ISIS, her priests were, I think they were eunuchs. They certainly couldn't wiggle the winkle. So Vesta, important that we start to have a look and think maybe something's going on there with old Vesta. And there again is Vesta on the old wiki Telfibber geezer gig. Clerical celibacy. It says, is the requirement in certain religions that some or all members of the clergy be unmarried? Clerical celibacy also requires abstention from deliberately indulging in sexual thoughts and behaviour outside of marriage, because these impulses are regarded as sinful. When obviously the Jesuits don't see it that way, do they? In fact, they like to bum children, as we've seen over the last God knows how long. House of the Vestals, there is a temple still in Rome, or the remnants of it. and it's on the eastern edge of the Roman Forum and between Regia and the Palatine Hill, where Pontifex Maximus dwelled. And the Temple of Vesta in Tivoli, it's a so-called Temple of Vesta, is a small circular Roman temple in Tivoli, Italy, dating to the early 1st century BC. Its ruins are dramatically sited on the Acropolis of the Etruscan and Roman city, overlooking the falls of the Anniane and picturesque Nero Gully. Now, Etruscans, who are the Etruscans? I studied them for a long time, way back in the day, and it's mysterious. You don't get any proper answers in relation to trying to work out who the Etruscans actually were. Minoans perhaps, even Phoenicians perhaps, or even Trojans. It's not clear. But one thing's for sure, whoever they were is being obfuscated. There's also the goddess Vatica, again another goddess. And when I was studying, I approached the Roman system from Robert Graves' mythos. So that's in sync with Tolkien, which, in my opinion, Tolkien was in sync with the goddess side of the church rather than this imperial side, placenta side, trust, basically nicking your life force game that's been going on for quite a long time. So if you want to get an insight into what the church was, then you would be wise to study Robert Graves, the White Goddess Special. And back in those days, the studies was, in fact, that wasn't done in the mystery school. That was done maybe about 10, God, I forget, 22, 23, probably about 13, 14 years ago. And the distinct impression you were getting is that Rome itself was an amalgamation of goddesses. So how they managed to keep this idea up that it were a single garden god, it's beyond me. And of course then you can get the no smoke without fire, where the Gnostics talk about how it's, at its core, it's still an old school pagan power base, but they've shoved you into this particular garden under this one diktat. Well, because of course if they didn't do that, it wouldn't be able to include the Judean side of things, or Babylonian as it is. So it all makes sense to me why they've done what they've done, how they've done it, for what reason, and here we are today. Biblical tradition in its entirety about to annihilate itself while the rest of the world watches. Ready for the 200-man army. So it doesn't matter who wins in this gig, out of these three bunch of nut jobs. There's coming in after to mop up a 200 million man yellow army. That's what they set up. Doesn't mean they say it's going to happen, but that's the gig. That's what they're setting up. And everybody's stuck in the map. That's what's being manipulated. It's being manipulated by the telly, by your belief system, by your imams, your priests, your vicars, your rabbis. You're believing it. It's your map. You edit it. You're not looking at the territory. The territory is, as we've just discussed, completely different, but it's a setup. And it's down for complete and utter Armageddon. So, yeah, anyway. Stuart says, no window in the southeast for days. How could dust come from anywhere? Well, you're quite right about that as well, because it wasn't a windy gig either. There was no wind per se, apart from just this strange that disappeared as quick as it came. Because I was out in it, And the first thing that struck me was, this is an odd, and it don't feel right. But the second was when it was just raining, and when I put my wipers on, it was brown shit. And then when it had finished, which it probably lasted 20 minutes, everything was covered in this shite. So yeah, Stuart, I'm in agreement with you. I really am. And the reason I made that short is because it's an opportunity for people to just snap out of this TV dream that they're embedded in. That's again trying to go for this shit that we went through last time. So Treen says, Stuart, you are right. No wind to speak of at all. Exactly. Exactly. And that, you know, we have to think of it in these terms. This is how you undermine the spell. Because you get the spell story coming out of the television and the politicals, and if you're just dealing with your map, you'll accept it. Because it's give you everything you need. Whereas if you stop and go, okay, let's analyse this, analyse that. So straight away, it's not sand, it's magnetic. Second, it's not sand because there's no crystalline structure to it. It doesn't feel like anything kind of sand I've ever used as a material. No wind. No wind, you know? Interesting. Once you start looking at that and looking at the evidence for yourself, then you're starting to train your map. And you're less likely then to be trapped by the propaganda machine that everybody sucks into. Anthony says, there is a website by the name BDO UK Towing, a script for the new UK government corporate regime named UK Socks. Maybe worth having a dig, Sean. See what you think. Okay, I won't be able to. You know, I signed into this chat and it's not letting me chat, so they're stopping me from chatting with you on here, just so that you know. So when it comes up, which will be tomorrow, I will have a look at that and see what you're saying. Touting, not towing. Okay, nice one. Predictive text. Yeah. Untitled says Anthony Musgrove, BDO Remit UK, incorporated on 21st September 1998, lower ground floor, Strand Bridge House, Strand, London. Well, the Strand is the backbone to the inner city of London, from which Adelphi House, Shelmex House, Embankment, Cleopatra's Shadow, Phantom Willie is, and that obelisk is the commissioning of the power to the city. The US have one. That's it. It's commissioning of power by these shitbag bloodlines that class themselves as Egyptian just because they moved there. They're not Egyptian. Well, they're certainly not Kemites anyway. Anyway, so Alexander the Great's to blame. Trinchon, it makes me sick kissing just how he's behind all of this shit. Well, he's got a guy that's about to take over from him as well. It's not him, it's his position. But I've seen videos and testimonies of the kind of things that Kissinger's done to people on an individual level. Let's just say he likes to stick it in your back hole without your permission. And he doesn't really care where he does it. His bodyguards make sure it's all okay. So yeah, but he's German. Heinz Kissinger is his name. But of course he's a back-end German. Prussian rather than actually Germanic. When will those bastards die? Well, you think about what he's having to do to keep himself alive, the old toad. You know what I mean? How old is he now? He's knocking on a bit. And even, actually, people thought he were older than he were way back in the day. Because for a time they tried to put him up as a sex symbol. And the baby boomers, some of them seem to go for it. Whatever tickles your fancy, if you ask me. But yeah, it's... So WF, Kissinger Associates, now you can see Kissinger, in my opinion, fully controlling or guiding the Rockefellers in their entirety from the 1950s onward. On behalf of the Round Table. So yeah, interesting. And Cos has given it the old Sherlock Holmes gig on. Nice one there, Cos. So that's covered that. Where are we on? 116. Okay. Because to be honest, I hadn't actually put anything together, and I thought, well, we'll just do a Q&A. So was there anything else I wanted to look at? Let me just have a look. Because I do forget stuff. I'm pretty good at that. And I do miss things out sometimes as well that it's quite important. That we need. No, I think I've covered that now actually. So that's a gig done. So I can close that off. Now what else do I have? Okay. So Rockefeller. Okay. Branch managers. I think it was David Icke that brought that in one of his books early on. The branch managers for the Holy See via the Round Table. Okay, so that's what we're seeing. Committee of 300 we're seeing here. And now let's get to nitty-gritty as what the hell's going on in Blighty, because we've discussed before, haven't we? We've got the Black Nobility direct the Windsors, although if you go with Greg Allett's gig, which I believe is coming from a Templar point of view, they're not even that, they're frauds. That they're actually Spencer Churchill's, sired by, or mother sired by, Winston. Now, I don't know, but we do have Winston's private secretary's bastard kid sitting atop of the Church of England. Sorry, Church away from England, Church of Israel. That's a fact. What else have we got? There's a few other little shenanigans, but I can't remember. Anyway, never mind. But whatever, that's what he's saying. So they're not even that side of things, if you will. They're something else other than what they're portrayed to be. But they have to keep this idea going because, like, you go back to what I was saying, William, patron of Orc. Orc, we tied to Dutra. Way back in the mist of time, it's a video, you can't, there is no rebuttal. The video shows you go from EIM, which is what Arpad Booson was a part of at the same time he was heading Orc, takes you to the same organisation that was involved in the Dutra. And that weren't just a paedophile ring, that was snuff, murder, torture. You wouldn't believe what were going on with the Dutra side. And there were a lot of Saxe-Coburg Gotha tied into it, high-level Jesuits, but it mainly an aristocratic gig going on there. And Orc is tied to that. William is the patron saint, patron of it. Paul Marshall, we've gone through it. Interesting character, hedge fund guy, set up Orc with the cash. Son, Winston Marshall, was in the band, I forgot the name, and daughter Penny Marshall, who was big at the Daily Telegraph. But mother is the interesting point of debulking it. Debulking it, when you look into the game, we're bringing in Troy and Allah. Okay? Now, Black Nobility or nay, doesn't matter. They, in their entirety as a group, not so much Marshall and what debulking is, but Epstein. Epstein is in there. A lot of the people involved in that are in Epstein's book, are being blackmailed by that network. Blenheim Palace. Yeah? Let me just get that in. I put this together early. Blenheim Palace, which is another crew. I don't know how I got that in. I've rushed this, obviously. You know, these people, Evelyn de Rothschild, attending, Red Cross use Blenheim Palace. So Red Cross is the Uber global international child trafficking network, seems to have its gigs at Blenheim Palace. Arnold Bangberger, chairman of Cartier UK. David Furnish. Again, these are people at Blenheim Palace, June 26, 2004. But it's used like this a lot. Tatler, you've got Hugo Ferranti, Christine L. Room, Sebastian Ziani Di Ferranti. All these people, some of them are in Epstein's book. So you've got what appears to be the accepted royal families, or there's frauds, blackmailed, involved in all the shit that's tied to Epstein. Then we have the supposed rebel side that's tied to the American power base, or the families that were here that got more powerful in America, Blenheim Palace. But still, you've got these people tied in under Epstein. So it looks to me like our entire aristocracy, whichever side of the fence they're on, are being guided by the forces that are pull together the Epstein network, which, as we said before, was in the hands of Robert Maxwell. So that's Piers Morgan. Yeah? It's all the phone hacking that were going on, the blackmail, etc. Because that was what Maxwell, that's why he gained so much power. He had everybody blackmailed. Now, Ted Heath, being the man that were blackmailed into getting us into Europe as treason, was directly controlled by Henry Kissinger. Directly. Yeah? So you can see it all comes back to this round table, CFR, Club of Rome, United Nations, Bilderberg Group, yeah? All satellites of the Round Table. And David Icke did a lot of good stuff back in the day with that, because he put that out. He really did. He put it out. Betsy Bloomingdale, again, 2004, Red Cross. Red Cross used Blenheim a lot more than just this one gig. Ned Ryan. I can't actually read. It's a bit small for in here, but Baroness von Maltzen, again in there. We've got to see it. William Turner, the Marquis of Blandford, William Turner. Divorce for Diamond Heiress. It says Lord Charles Spencer Churchill, again attended the ball for the Red Cross. His second wife Elizabeth Jane Wyndham, Shelby Bryan, and Jacqueline Williams. I mean, I don't know a lot of these names in all truth, because they're a big American contingent. You know what I mean? Jeffrey Epstein, all these people here that were there are in Epstein's book. So Epstein has a networks in everything. And they're blackmailing all these people, or our aristocracy, as you might say, to the will of this garbage. Who's that? Nicholas Soames. Yeah, he's the Churchill, isn't he? He's in Epstein's book. Tom Ford. So we're back to the beginning of there. So that's your Blenheim crew in there. And a lot of them are in Epstein's black book. Not all of them, but some of them. And as we said before, I put the video up, that most of them you could see in there didn't have a clue what were going on. Robert and Kim Hersoff are in Epstein's book. So, you know, the Grace Tales, whatever that is, who are the Zellinger de Balkanies. So this is de Balkanies. And that pulls us down to what we've got today. Mr. and Mrs. Winston Churchill. He part of the Circle. French branch of this. Black nobility in the House of Savoy. Yeah, again. This is your de Balkanies. You know, Sotheby's cocktail. We've looked at this stuff before. So what appears for two branches of aristocratic power, and both being controlled from the same. Lynn Watts attends Blenheim, whoever she is. Her son Steve Watts is listed in Epstein's black book. Lady Victoria Getty, third wife of John Paul Getty. Princess Marie Chantal of Greece. Robert Anson. So we've been through them. Again, black book. Can you see? Now, inner city of London, Netherlands financial foreign countries. After stadholder William III had become the King of England, the financial contact with him. I've done it again. I've not met him long enough. So what's this? This is Charles II. When we're looking at the office. That's right. The office of monarch was. The court of the monarch was abolished. And I think a lot of it went on actually when James II became the king. They really wrecked that. I remember reading something where Edward VIII, before he died, had actually said to his enemies, I know what you're doing and I'm going to make sure you don't get what you want. Now, whether that works or not, I don't. Crown is not the royal family of the British monarch. The Crown is the private corporation of London. Yeah? So that's holding our estates. Yeah? In the Bank of England. The forgotten majority of German merchants in London between the end of the Hanseatic League and the end of the Napoleonic Wars became the largest mercantile Christian immigrant group in the 18th century. Did you get that? The royal default of 1676. Charles II once again defaulted on loans with his creditors. Oh, it wasn't. 49 is before Charles II, so it's after they killed Charles I. So killing Charles I removed the court of the king and turned it into an office. The Great Stop of 1672 caused 5 of the leading London goldsmiths to go dry. We've looked at this stuff, haven't we, actually? So there we go. Hanseatic League. Henry II of England exempt the merchants. So 1157, look. So after they've imposed themselves on the church, then they're imposing themselves on finance. So I'm not going to have to look at Edward I in a completely different light, which would be in sync with everything I studied way back in the day, which was Edward I was a bastard. So maybe, you know, so just again, a few bits and bats for you to take a look at. And again, we've got the cabinet. Just to remind, as A.V. Dicey observed, the cabinet was in theory nothing but a committee of the Privy Council. Yet with the Privy Council, the cabinet, has in reality no dealings. And thus the extraordinary result has taken place that the government of England is in the hands of men whose position is legally undefined. But while the cabinet is a word of everyday use, no lawyer can say what the cabinet is. Yeah, now I have another one that I want you to look at as well. Because let's just say it gets a bit of teeth behind it, what they're trying to push back there on the TV land. I mean, obviously I'm not watching telly, but I know that's what they're doing. This is in relation to imprisonment. Okay? And what it is. It says, any type of detainment or confinement, restriction or deprivation of liberty or freedom of locomotion, so that's movement, where he is compelled to remain where he does not wish to remain, or to go where he does not wish to go, is an imprisonment. Whether or not the imprisonment is false, false comes from the common law and is synonymous with unlawful, okay? So if it's a false imprisonment, it's unfucking lawful. And this comes from a treatise on arrest and false imprisonment by Charles A. Wiseman. I suggest you look up the link to that because you need to look at it. Can you see there? So everything they did before is a false imprisonment is unlawful. Not illegal on equity side, but if you can come out of the equity and come into common law as a land right, second right claim to land, yeah, so you've got the freehold of your land, then you can move for unlawful act and you can claim damages beyond comprehension, ladies and gentlemen. How about that for a game of soldiers? Yeah? Interesting gig. What have you got saying? Untitled, that's one. Okay, sorry. Disciples of Say, peace and grace for the children of family. Well, thank you, sir. And the same to you and all of you that are on here watching. Right, that's me done the gig. Any questions? On anything you want. We can chat about any old malarkey. Because we've got half an hour left. So, anyway, I know there's a delay in this, so I'll allow for that. But it's probably some good data in there for people to pursue. But again, unlawful as a term for false imprisonment. And that's exactly what they did. As an institution, the Crown, Parliament, and every agency of it did that and carried it out and were proud of it and are still proud of it. It's unlawful. We're talking prison time. Boris, the little shit. Crusading he is in Ukraine. To the point they've given him an honorary degree, some batshit crazy university in Ukraine have given crusading Boris the Churchill a degree. Now, just a bit more back on G20 because I didn't actually finish it. So basically the whole gig that they were promoting in the media as how it was going to go down didn't go down. There was no condemnation of Russia at all from any of the members apart from Sunak, Biden. But Biden, you want to look up Biden talking at G20. Shit, man. The world's watching. The world's watching and saying, America needs to die. Look at the fucking numpty they've got stood atop of him. You know what I'm saying? That's the sort of banter that's being created for everything outside the biblical tradition so that nobody's going to intervene. Are you digging the scene, man? Shit, man. So that failure. Putin, as he didn't attend. And the 8 Russia mandate didn't work. Ukraine tried, so that didn't work. They couldn't get anybody to say it. So what did Ukraine, Zelensky, Soros say? he's going on about, he's trying to invoke Article 5 of NATO, which is an attack on another country, is an attack on NATO, by going on about he's found Russian drone fragments in Romania. So that little shitbag's trying to get everybody excited and NATO excited. I mean, you know, key now. And that failed miserably too. And so the grain deal that got cancelled, because guess why it got cancelled? It got cancelled because the grain deal was that SWIFT would be made available to the Russian bank dealing with agriculture, the main one in Russia. That was the agreed deal for the grain deal. The West reneged on it. They still haven't done it. They said, they changed it then and said, well, we'll do it to a lesser bank. And they still haven't done that. So on the one hand, in the West, they're all moving on agreement law against you, while running around internationally saying, kiss my ass, we're not carrying out what we've agreed. Yeah? You still think you've got a functioning democracy? You still think you've got a functioning council? You still think your police are operating in accordance to the 9 principles laid out and taken up in 1829? No, they're not. No, they're not. So Erdogan has been in intermediary on this, trying to get this grain deal going again. And he's made it very clear that the deal's only on if the West will stick to what's agreed. And why wouldn't they? Well, because they're clowns, aren't they? Running our nations. Clowns down at childcare, Westminster. You've got a fat-fingered, big-eared monster running around in an Aggie Squeezer kilt up there in Aggie Squeezer land, and his son trying to pull in everybody like he's some kind of fucking hero. You've done nothing, son, apart from merit your whore, which you were instructed to do according to Greg Allert. So, you know, and Russia wants the SWIFT system back. And I don't blame it. Why not? We need that SWIFT system to work. If they're going to start, taking it off Russia means the BRIC system isn't going to be using it. We'll be a lesser, if you look at our currencies, the fiat currency's fault. But what it does need is needs us to come to terms and understand how we become settlers for our estates. Discharge the debt. Everything's running on the fact that they have our estates on ransomed because of this funny money debt that they've installed upon us. We need to discharge the debt. And that basically covers the G20. It's just not gone down at all well in relation to what these rest and fruit brats are trying to get going. Nobody hates Russia except Sunak, Boris and Biden. And that fruit bat. The fruit bats in Russia, Europe, Canada, Australia, they don't really say much at the moment, to be fair. You're not getting much going on from Aussies. We don't know what they're up to. But it's just a shit show. A total 100% shit show. And the biblical tradition is going to be annihilated by itself and then mopped up. I mean, of course, this is down the line. We've 3 more horses to come out yet. But that's the gig they've got going on. But more importantly, you're doing it because you're running on the map that they've installed, the software. And the software is like ChatGPT. It misses the important stuff so that you're at a loss. You know, I had a guy young guy when it come out of fish, go, oh, it's fucking ChatGPT, why you want to get on to? I mean, it's bullshit. It's not. I said, it might be useful. I said, but it's not what you think. Yeah, everybody's out. I'm like, right, we'll ask it some questions. I said, I'll show you that it's not. So I asked it some questions on law. You fucking fumbled all over the show, wouldn't tell you. He said, I've got a trick. You have to say, pretend. Like that, right? And then in some cases, it'll give you, we don't even do it, it's fumbling. I said, there you go. It only knows what it's had put in it. And them that have put it in it have made sure it won't give you the key to anything. Yeah, but what it will do is enable the elites to completely wreck what's left of industry, i.e. artistic stuff, etc., because everybody's going to be running for this shite. So, there you go, folks. That's pretty much me run out of steam. Anything else being said? Anthony says, sorry, Guitar Girl says, the stat deck or solemn declaration, drawing up wills, etc. How shall we approach this without falling on our arse and getting tripped up? Okay. So the solemn declaration is basically you declaring who you are. And in so doing, it declares who you're not. Because the old system out there in the world of equity is working on the presumption that you don't know shit. But more importantly, that none of your rights are operational because you don't know them. That's the presumption. And that presumption is correct because you don't know your rights. So you certainly can't enforce them. Okay? So you're on the checkerboard, but you're just a pawn because you don't know nothing. Know nothing about anything. They're there operating according to all the acts and statutes that come out their arsehole. Right? They cannot go off them. But their presumption, once it's joined, and then you are there as the Sesquiv Trust, the dead side of the ledger, the cross, it doesn't matter. They can have you. You're liable. Yeah? They're going to make some money on the equity side. So, the stat deck and the paperwork is a very small part. And, get this in your minds, people. This is what I've come to understand in the last 3 years, specifically the last 3 years, but more intense in the last 10 months. You have to understand their game. Because you have to understand their moves. Because you're going to come in that solemn declaration. Checkmate. However, you have to be able to back it up. So this 10 months has been an intense, and I mean intense, in-depth study of things I already knew in concept, but breaking it down to etymology. What do they really mean? What do they really say when they say it? Because then you can start to understand the acts as they understand it, not as we're expected to understand it. There is no easy gig, which is why I say time and time again, you have to start again. Because what you're actually, I had it today, I thought about it today, that it's what you're actually changing, not so much the data you have, but how did I word it to myself today? You are actually, the battle lines for you personally are understanding how the system is applied. Because until you understand that, you can't invert that application to your advantage, which is your right as the principal and original beneficiary. You are the principle, your flesh and blood upon which all the trusts are built. But you don't know that. And if you know it, you don't know how to express it verbally or in written form. It's essential that you about turns. And I've done it twice, so you've no excuse, any of you. I can't do that, it's not work, I haven't got time. Well, fine if you haven't got time. You're not going to achieve it. There's nothing I can do about it. You're not going to achieve it, are you? And we are working damn hard, and we are, honestly, I'm amazed at the sort of, the knowledge base now and how it really gets into it. When you get down to fraud, forgery, all this kind of stuff. I mean, I can just put this up while we're chatting if you like. Just, these are just, so these are just, it's a folder full of definitions that I've had to look into further to understand this gig as I'm getting it now, if you get what I'm saying. So, I mean, obviously, after you can go back if there's any there you like. So basically, there's no easy way out, Guitar Girl. You really have to start again. But it's you look at it's the application of this game rather than what you've studied. So there's nothing wasted with what you've done, but the way that we apply it in the game is wrong, which is why it doesn't work, And then why it gets angry. We get angry because it's not working and we don't understand why it's not working. We think we do. We just say they're being arseholes, they're incompetent. They are. And in a lot of cases, yes, they are. But when you put that down correctly in a solemn declaration, which is what it is, and then you go in for the acceptance side of things, because you've always got to work out an acceptance, because that's the underwriter. That underwrites the agreement that you're then in with these people. So there's no easy gig. There really isn't. And we haven't done it yet. We're there. Public notice. Oh, wait a minute. Anthony says, the issue where the courts are concerned is that they themselves are now nothing more than legal administrative venues. They don't hear law, only legal administration. What's your take on it? Well, of course they're not hearing law. They can't. They're in the fiction. They're on the equitable side, and you've walked in as the SQV Trust. Now, I watched an interesting video the other day in America. A young lad had gone in, and the judge kept asking for, "And are you such and such? Are you Johnny Lipstick?" And he said. So we're at the point where he said, "I'm beginning to think that this court is incompetent, and the people herein are also incompetent, as I've tried to get across to you on 3 occasions that I am here as the administrator of the trust. I am not the trust. You are not the trust. I am here to administer in the same way that you are administering your court." He tried to get excited. He ordered the bailiffs to come and get him and kick him out. The guy was savvy. He just said, "Don't come anywhere near me. I'll have you for assault. Back off." They did. In fact, they were actually on his side, to be frank. The judge was shouting himself, papping it and shouting and screaming. Then the judge, he couldn't get it. He said it to him again, "I'm here administrating the trust." The judge stood up, bowed, and walked off, quick. And the guy then said, "I want the court to note, he's abandoned the ship, he's abandoned the case. I now take command. I rule this case be dismissed with prejudice." Yeah, so unless you're at that kind of savviness with your data, you don't want to be going into court. There are a lot of things you can do to go if you're going to go into court. Let me say, there's a lot of things, but ultimately you want to kill it in the paperwork by checkmate. You're getting them into an agreement. Yeah. I mean, we're moving and working to this, and we're working hard. And believe you me, I've never done so much transcribing in my life, and I am so sick of it. But I'm nearly at the end of it now. And then who knows what's going to be down the line? Well, I don't know. But if I'm going to teach this stuff, it will not be done on the internet. I can guarantee it, because you can't make it public. You don't want to make it public in that sense, because you're pulling yourself from the private and putting a document in there, i.e. solemn declaration, into the public. Yeah? People can't see that. You can't. If you start showing people, it collapses, doesn't it? It's not there anymore. It's public. So we're working on that first, and then who knows how it's going to be taught, but it will not be done on the internet, I'll tell you now. And we will not fuck about with fools and numpties and people who are just trying to gain information to make money. I mean, I know you guys are out there, and I don't have a problem if you're making money. I have a problem if you're making money and you're fucking it up, and then not sorting the people out. Either you're not helping them when they get stuck, or you're just running off and taking the money. Now, that I'm not impressed with any of that malarkey, I'll tell you that now. But we can all make mistakes. And as I said a month or so ago, have we reached a point where even people themselves who were trying to help people have realised that the gig that they're operating isn't up to scratch? That's feasible. But it's what you do after that shows the measure of the man, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm watching everything. Where we go? Public notice says they are, but down to your status. It's all about your status. And the minute you walk in that court, not go into court itself, into the court building, you've gone in as, unless you haven't. You know what I'm saying? Where are we now? Kel says, geez, I might try and move to Russia. Listen, there's no difference in Russia. Russia's implementing every WEF shit going. And I might pull that together for you next week so you can see. Everything that's going on here is going on in Russia in the background. Putin is an arsehole. Yeah, although, saying that, I'll retract that, because I'm going to say, Vlad, if you're listening, can you sell me or give me some ground-to-air missiles? Because we've got a major problem here with these jet sprayers. So I'll put off the fact that you're bad. I'll just get it over, and then we're back. It's off. But we need to sort these planes out, Vlad. So if you can supply me with some SAMs or something to that degree, I'll be quite happy. Now, what was I going to say? I've lost my train there. Move to Russia. But no, what I'm saying is Russia is implementing every single shit thing that the WEF are thinking, is because China is the game. What's the West done? It's forced Russia into the hands of China. Are you seeing that? India is sucking it up. Everybody's sucking up the game that's been set up in China, the corporation China. And this is not against Chinese people. Chinese people are going to suffer this in the same way the entire West has. There's going to be no difference. But every single thing has to be done in a certain order. One has to annihilate one before another annihilates another to another, and then you've got a 200 million man yellow army to mop up. Whew, can you get that? That's... and yeah, public notice is very clear there. If you don't fully comprehend it, do not try it. Do not try it. Now, I don't mind helping people if they need data, but honestly, you know, I'm struggling to finance this game, and now it's getting to a point where I'm in a mess. I will help people, but I'm gonna need some lolly. Otherwise, I can't spend my time, because, you know, it's getting to a point now where I am flat fucking broke. I've no home of my own to call for. You know what I'm saying? It's not getting any better, the material side of my life. It's got a lot worse. So if you're coming from that angle, you must understand that I'm going to have to ask for something. Where in Europe would be safe bet? Just stay where you are and everybody grow up. Train. Everybody start acting against this, learning what they need to learn. You know what I mean? If people have got the energy, I've got the knowledge. And not only me, I've got, you know, a lot of very trusted people around me now that I do trust. They're not stupid, they're not thick, they're not crazy, they're not looking for money, they're not doing business. These people are real, and I call them my friends. You know what I'm saying? So there's a much bigger group of people for advice, etc. But it has to be done in an orderly and proper manner. Otherwise, you're wasting your time and you're wasting my time. So you don't fully, do not try it. Kel says, a mate of mine was stating his rights back in the lockdowns. Cops tackled him to the ground and arrested him. Power does grow from the barrel of a gun. As old Mo said, be clever about things. Exactly, be as wise as serpents. Kel says, geez, I might just try and move to it. Yeah, no, forget it. It's even worse in Russia because they're being pumped up with Chinese stuff. If you don't learn, you won't know the process. You won't. And people are just, you know, knowledgeable, but they're too born idle to start again. I can't help you because you've got to change the way you think it's applied. Because until you understand how it is applied, you'll not see the remedy. The remedy won't make sense, or the relief. Thanks, Sean. Public notice well said. I won't make a move or play. Treen says, where in Europe would be safe bet, and who's good at building boats? Well, that's then. I mean, Peter of England, you see 12 mile out is no man's land. And then you can come in, can't you, for 3 months without paying tax. Pirates of the Caribbean, there is a scene in it where Depp comes off the boat that sinks just as he jumps on to the land, and then he's met with the harbour master who's bent, takes 2 shilling, and then he picks up some cash. That is the symbolism. If you can understand that, you're well on your way to getting that application side right. And then it's worth you putting your study in, because you will learn it, you'll understand it, because you're not getting cross. You know what I'm saying? Guitar Girl says, until I understand my standing fully, sorry, send too quickly, it's alright. Cos says, can we have a look at my question, Sean? Would be nice to hear for your answer. Where's that, mate? Oh, here we go. Sorry, Cos, I missed that. Cos says, here's a question. Who created God? Or did he always exist if you die? Does God die? So God is an invention, a term in the English. Okay? So that they can present the idea that an older story of creation made by Elohim, making man in our image, they said, the Jews believe this. So actually the Adamic race, he claimed to be, anyway, we're not getting into that, because they're not even Jews, those that call themselves Jews. I'm not going to touch that. God, the word, is an invention, but also, more importantly, the idea that it gives to your map is an invention, because it takes you off the plural side of the creators. So, English language created God to undermine an ancient story and put you under one in the garden. Hope that helps. Let's have a look. I've got friends, ex-Jews, who fled to Bulgaria. They're up the Russians' mountains off-grid. Got property and land for 3,000. Got all their own food and chickens. Yeah, but I mean, look at what's going on in Maui. They've got that technology. You've got to paint your house blue. If you get out into sticks, paint the whole fucking shindig blue. Everything. Because the laser doesn't touch it. So you watch, there'll be a shortage of blue pigment now. You won't be able to buy blue paint anywhere. None of the blue cars were lit up. None of them. Anything plastic doesn't touch it. So you could actually probably get away with putting the correct plastic over your roof as like a canopy, and your property's safe. We have to start thinking like this. Militia mind. We're heading into a time of no peace, not being able to trust anybody. It's important we come together, people, like-minded, people that we can trust. You set up your own cells and men you can trust. You don't want anybody that's criminal and that's been caught because they might be under the informer network. It's up to you to create your own trusted cell, and then we can start coming together like that. Always use recorded delivery. You have to use recorded delivery because the important side, you've got to witness the Postmaster General, but the Postmaster General, the moment it's delivered and handed over with a registered, it's served. You have served it on whomever. But then you want the signature at the other side as well. Important stuff. Private and public don't mix. No, they don't. Not at all. And if you do mix them up, it's dead. It's gone. It's collapsed. They are all in the same club, whatever country. At the top they are, yes. But they still don't understand the game. Most of these lawyers, they have no idea. The stuff I've learned, I'd never even consider. It's not that I've not heard about it or come across the term. I didn't understand how it conjoined. Yeah, because it's like you've got all this shit everywhere. It's like a lightning strike through it all. Yeah, and the rest around it is just to confound you. It gives them ability to make it take 7 years to educate you if you're going into law or such. Yeah. Yeah, they are all mates. Putin, Biden, Boris, of course they are. Sharing out the kiddies, yeah. Well, I don't know who's doing that exactly, but there's a lot of people that we know that do. Michael Jr. says, have you ever listened to any Christian Walters Trust stuff? I can't say that I have, Michael. I've never come across... The name doesn't ring a bell. It doesn't mean to say I've never actually watched something. Because as I said, I've been doing this for 15 years. Studying the law. So as far as I know, that name really doesn't ring a bell. But I can't swear and say that I've never actually looked at any of his stuff. Pitano once says, change your mind, change your world. Exactly. It's changed the fucking map. Because the map is only a part of who you are as a mind. Your entire body, the mind is all your senses, your intuition, your conscience. All that is mind. The map here that they force you to obsess about, the brain, that's the trickster. That's where they get you. That's where it's all going on. Let's have a look. A public notice says, going to court as the first name and surname equals person. Yes, because you've conjoined the dead trust, the family's father's name. Yep. you are the CQV trust. There's trust behind that, and trust can act as beneficiaries behind this SQV. This is the stuff we're learning at the moment, and unfortunately, we've just come across quite a lot more data in this week. But the difficult part is keeping catch up, because I'm still transcribing stuff that we started to look at months ago, and I'm not looking at anything else until I've completed that, otherwise we will lose all the work that we've done. Then we can get stuck into what we've looked over in the last couple of weeks. But it's getting very interesting. So going to a court, yeah. Kel says Bulgaria. Now that's interesting. It has a big Muslim population. Be careful with Muslims. Not because there's anything against Muslims, but once this shit with the Third Temple kicks off, which is what I think is going to happen, everything's going to change, whether we like it or not. You know what I'm saying? So be careful. But you know, I say this to everybody: don't run away. You're here where you are because this is where you were put. It's where you were born. It's where you were put. You've stayed. This is where you have to fight your fight. Or for Muslims, do your jihad, i.e., suffer, not the physical one. But then, who am I to tell you what to do? I'm not. If helping people for free, others should show appreciation. I've always helped for free. I've never charged. People have given me stuff though sometimes, but what I'm saying is it takes time and effort to do. I can't afford that time or effort anymore. I need to be working, physically working, to earn the coin. Otherwise, I'm going nowhere. You see, this is the problem with me. For these years, I've done this work for everybody else at my expense. And now I'm at the point where I've hit a brick wall. I can't keep not looking after myself, because it goes tits up, and then I have to start again, and I'm fed up. And you know, people you can't trust anybody. You can't trust it because everybody wants a piece of something. They're not giving for giving's sake. They want something. They're doing business. Yeah, and I'm at a point now where I can see that so clearly in people, and it's sad. But that's who they are. You've got to... And I can't operate like that anymore, is what I'm saying. Pugno says Masons are disbanding. It's not that they'll disband, they just want to kick out the lodge leaders, and then we'll pull it back to how it should be. England. And for Scotland, Scotland. And Wales, it doesn't matter whether you like it or not, you've always been fucking England. So, you know, you might just have to shag sheep for a few months while we sort this out. Let's have a look. But that's another thing as well that's forgotten. And I did say this, when the Lombardy collapsed, there's a lot of data to suggest that the Lombardies moved into Wales, and they were the ones that kept up this idea that everybody ate England. But when you look into Edward I, he did most of his warring with the Welsh. Not against them, with the Welsh army and the Germans. So his militaries were based of the Welsh people and the Germans. So this idea that he was just attacking the Welsh, maybe he was attacking the original Welsh with these Lombards that had come over. Yeah, food for thought. So Masons, I'd like a bit of evidence on that, mate, if there are any data you've got to suggest that's what's happening. But the Masons have to do something with themselves because they're being scapegoated. And I'm an Englishman. You know, I know everybody. I know Masons. I've known them all my life. The good people. They've just been fucked over. Like everybody has. They're no better and no worse than you, yourself. You've been fucked over. You've been lied to. You fell for it. If we don't get away from this, I hate you because my map says, we're going to get nowhere. We're going to get nowhere. I went to Chamber of Trade the other week. My God, there's people ready and trying to get something going. But people are just so low grade in their understanding of the game. And in this last 10 months, I've gone so far outside of it. It's just, I don't think I'm going to find a point at which we can operate together. Because they're stuck in the map. They can't see past it. And in that map, you're not going to get remedy at all. So I'm even considering leaving that to it because it's just not going to happen for me. They can do it themselves by all means, but I can't see any method in there that's going to give me any kind of springboard. Anthony Musk says, generator operator destroyer sounds fitting. Public Note says Moses went up a mountain and spoke to his imaginary friend. Exactly. It's a load of bollocks. Even his wife was slagging him off if you read his story. But I've said Moses is a take on Sargon, just like the flood is a take on the Upanishad stuff. It's all bullshit. It were amalgamated, formed together. The biblical tradition is, in that sense, it's a concoction. The highest form it gave itself, or earned, you might say, in its time, was the gospel. But does anybody follow the gospel? No, they're worshipping a man that never said, worship me. He said, follow me, and he tells you what he was doing, expressing the kingdom within. What's everybody done? Expressing the kingdom without, and saying, I'm following this guy. You're not following him at all. You're worshipping. That's a completely different concept. It's garbage. Utter shit. Nonsense. Pirates of the Caribbean is full of giveaway signs. You better believe it. It's the story. Anthony Musgrove says, SQV interested beneficial parts of the SQV trust. Treen says, can you arrange a workshop then, Sean? I'd be there. I'd be willing to pay for your guidance. Well, like I said, yes, we will do it in that way, but we're not going to do it on the internet. Most of the people on the internet are looking to nick something and make something for themselves. You know, I'm in this last couple of years, I've come aware of so many of these people out there in these groups that come across as thingy. But I'll tell you what it is, when you start meeting people that personally know them, you get to the other side of the story. And so it's bigger than you think. And a lot of these people are claiming to be Christians. Right? I'll just give you that. Let's have a look. Can you yeah. A lot of us would train. Okay, well, but right for now, we're working on dealing with this and getting it right. There will be no point doing workshops at this stage because we're still on the game. I'll tell you what, though, it's getting there. Michael Jr. says it's Red Pill Day tomorrow. And cause the 1973 gives you the sheep and the gigs on. Not gigs on, just the eyeballs looking at the old sheep's bottom. Are you not from Yorkshire, are you, cos? By any chance? Michael Jr. says, yeah, done that. Tree says, yes, the new Silk Road from Ukraine, Russia, India, Afghanistan, Iran and China. You gotta believe it. Public notes, I got sick of putting my own time into others who did not bother to understand. No, they want you to do it for them. That's unfortunate. And I don't mind doing it for some people. And I have done it for some people. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not promoting it as such. But I can achieve this for you, but doing it. You know, I can actually get you off. I can settle things for you if they're big and frightening. But it wouldn't be a case of me teaching you. It would be me doing the paperwork for you. Yeah? And you would have to give me every detail. You'd have to tell me every single truth about the situation, even if you come out looking bad. You cannot half tell me or give me the data that's given the situation you're in. I need to know it all. Of course, it would be absolutely 100% confidential. So what I'm saying is, teaching you right now is not there, but I can actually do this for you, but it means me doing the paperwork fully and sending it in. Right? I can do that, but I'd have to charge, is what I'm saying. Picking people up from Mason's Bastion was drunk, so I listened to the way they're talking about disbanding, said for every 3 lodges we'll go down to 1. See, that's sad because England was run because of the might and the power of the lodges. It's just unfortunate that from the get-go it was being took over by these shitbags. Public Note says, I stood losses with them 10 like eating an elephant. Yeah, it's made so that it's confounding and you don't get it because that's what they want. They want you to go through their channel so they can manipulate your map so that you're doing exactly what they said. And the more you're happy to know that there's a blag and carry out the blag, the higher you'll go until you're called to the boy because you've become the boy. Yep, that's what it's all about, folks. And with that, I'm going to say thanks for joining me. I hope you have a groovy week. I hope it made a bit of sense to you today and give you some data that is going to be useful And it leaves me only one thing to say, which is, till the next time.
electronic engineering.